trying to figure out the bridge between cleanup and the treasurer's office, so I don't know where I don't know where it exists,
He's
but I know that
doing a great cleanup on his end.
but I know in the last couple of times that the treasurer's been here, he's talked about a little about the indebtedness, not only of the state, but also as much indebtedness that cities and towns had, which always scares people in this audience. I know that was a. But the treasurer and I had a discussion about Main Streets. We were talking about Bristol just a little while ago, but Treasurer Seth Magaziner.
Well, thank you, John. Thank you, everybody. I'm not going to put everybody to sleep this year by talking about debt the whole time, but I will. I'll start by thanking Mark, and he does a terrific job organizing this event and advocating for small business year-round. Thank you again to President Makeley and the whole team here at Bryant for hosting us. To my colleagues in government who are up here, I have a tremendous amount of admiration for all of them. I've come to really enjoy working with all the people on this stage. The speaker, who is, I've found to be very thoughtful and very good at looking at issues from all different angles. Secretary Gorbea, who's breathed a lot of new life into the Secretary of State's office and has brought a lot of good reforms and activity. And then Secretary Pryor, who works tirelessly to attract businesses to Rhode Island and help businesses expand. I will say, when you leave the State House at night, I always keep an eye on whose cars are still in the parking lot, right? And particularly when the General Assembly is not in session, it's always the Commerce Office who are still, no matter how late I leave, if I'm there working till 9 or 10 or whatever it is, their cars are always still there, and that tells you something. So them and all of the legislators and council members who are in the audience, thank you for what you do. I look forward to this event every year because it's really helpful. It's really helpful to get this feedback. Every year I go back to my office with pages and pages of furiously scribbled notes, and this year is no exception. It's a good opportunity for us to listen to hear what's working and what's not. My primary goal as treasurer is to use the treasurer's office to help promote economic growth in Rhode Island. And I have said that consistently every year that I've been in office. There are always skeptics, and there are always people who say, well, economic growth, is that the treasurer's job? Well, I've made it our job. I've made it our priority, and I have some good results to report. A few weeks after we were here together last year, our office launched something that we call the Bank Local program. And this is to help local small businesses with access to capital, particularly those Main Street businesses that we heard about earlier. What we're doing is we are moving millions of dollars of the state's cash to local community banks and credit unions to help promote small business lending. Our office, depending on the time of year, we typically sit on between $500 million and $1 billion of cash, your cash, right? And what we have done is said that we are going to allocate up to $30 million of this cash to the Bank Local program. The way it works is, if a bank or a credit union is making a loan to a small business, a business with 100 employees or fewer, we will move an equal amount of the state's cash to that bank or credit union, and we will pledge to hold it there for the duration of the loan, up to $250,000. So if you are, the local People's Bank of First Rhode Island, and you make a $200,000 loan to a small business, we will move $200,000 of the state's cash to your bank, and we will pledge to keep it there for the duration of the loan. And it is important to note, the Treasurer's Office is not deciding which businesses get the loans. That's up to the banks and the credit unions. We are not putting any taxpayer money at risk because all of these deposits have to be federally insured and fully collateralized. What we are saying is that we want to put the state's money in institutions that are lending it out here locally. Since we launched that program a year ago, we have moved nearly $20 million of your money back home to local institutions, and we have supported more than 200 small business loans, a quarter of which have been loans to women or minority-owned enterprises. One example is in Wakefield, a salon called Hair on Main Street in Wakefield. The owner there, Stephanie Keenan, she had been an employee there for 9 years. The owner of the business was ready to sell. With a Bank Local loan, Stephanie was able to purchase the business from her employer and keep all of the people who had been working there at that business employed. And there are 200 other examples just like that. Another thing that we hear about a lot from business owners, beyond the difficulty getting access to capital, is the cost of doing business. We talked a little bit today about taxes, but another major cost of doing business in Rhode Island is energy costs. And there's a lot of reasons for that. The biggest reason, honestly, is that we're just at the end of the supply line, right? We don't produce oil in Rhode Island. We don't produce coal in Rhode Island. We don't produce natural gas in Rhode Island. We don't have big rivers for hydropower. So we're starting out at a disadvantage relative to peer states. So we've struggled with high energy costs in Rhode Island. One of the first things that I worked on when I took office, in partnership with the General Assembly and the Governor's Office, was launching some new programs at the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank to help small businesses with the cost of energy. One in particular that I'll highlight today is called the CPACE program, Property Assessed Clean Energy. This helps businesses in Rhode Island, particularly small businesses, get access to low-cost loans to help finance energy improvements to their buildings, retrofits, solar panels on the roof, etc. One example of that is a company called US Extruders in Westerly. They are a manufacturing company. They explained to me what they manufacture, but don't ask me because I didn't understand it. For manufacturers, we have over 1,000 manufacturing companies still in Rhode Island, small manufacturing companies predominantly, and the cost of doing energy is huge for them. This company was able to get a loan through the CPACE program, put some solar panels on their roof. After the cost of the loan, the net savings on their energy bills is about $500,000 a year. So they're saving more than $500,000 a year, using some of that savings to pay the loan back, and they're still recognizing net savings of almost $500,000 a year, which is huge for a small business. This is a new program. We passed it with the help of the General Assembly and the Governor 3 years ago. It just got up and running this year. 9 loans to small businesses around the state have been made so far, and there's about 100 more in the pipeline, so we're expecting a big year next year. Looking ahead, one issue that I have been working on over the past several months is in the capacity as a co-chair of a study group that was looking at school repairs and school construction in Rhode Island. And this was a good process. I was on this committee with Ken Wagner, the Education Commissioner, representatives of the House, the Senate, the building, the business community, the nonprofit community, and others. And one thing that I will make the case for today is that there is a real business impact to this. We have high schools in Rhode Island that do not have working science labs. How are we supposed to train our students for the jobs of today, the jobs of 2017, when some of our high schools, to say nothing about middle schools, we have 30 middle schools in Rhode Island that don't have science labs at all, but our high schools, we have some that do not have working science labs, that do not have science labs with gas lines that work, with water that works. So they're not really science labs, they're just classrooms. I've heard from teachers who say that they are trying to teach their kids coding and technology on Chromebooks, which is great, except they're a teacher and they have 30 kids with Chromebooks and 1 electrical outlet in the classroom. As a former teacher, that gives me, heart palpitations, right? You can imagine how that goes. We have school systems that are offering vocational programs, which is important and should be encouraged. But some of these programs have wait lists because the facilities are not large enough to handle the amount of demand at a time when we're trying to train a skilled workforce. So there is a workforce development aspect to this. And I look forward to continuing to advocate on this issue, to work with our partners in government, to come up with a plan that makes sense, because if we are going to train the workforce of the 21st century for all businesses, large and small, facilities in our schools is part of the solution. So I'll just close by saying once again, thank you. I take my job very seriously, the job of using the Treasurer's Office to help promote economic growth and support business in Rhode Island. I think we've made some good strides on access to capital, on helping small businesses with the cost of energy, and now looking at the school facilities issue. I will continue to be a watchdog when it comes to public debt. I will continue to take my job very seriously when it comes to managing the state's finances appropriately as a fiduciary. I love what I do. I love going into work every day, and I especially love interacting with crowds like this one, because this is what allows us to be good at our jobs, is getting this feedback from all of you who are on the front lines making Rhode Island work. So with that, I'll just say thank you, and I look forward to continuing to work with you in the year ahead.
Thank you, Treasurer.